You guys can sit down. Good morning, everyone. My name is Anneke DiPietro, and I've been a part of the All Saints community for 12 years, since I was 4. I'm a junior this year, so technically I shouldn't be up here yet. But Jeremy was kind enough to let me preach this year because next Youth Sunday, I'll be living across the world. So it seems fitting that the theme of my sermon is actually the reason I decided to spend a year studying in Europe. My passion in life is learning languages. I speak 6 conversationally, and I'm currently learning 3 more. I love languages because they allow me to meet amazing people all around the world, because they let me travel not as a tourist, but as a native, because they gave me this amazing opportunity in Europe, and I hope they'll give me many more. Languages have changed me and changed my life. So if I get a little too exuberant talking about them, you understand why. How many of you speak more than one language? Not bad. If you do, you're in a minority. Only about a quarter of Americans speak more than one language, and fewer still speak more than 2. This monolingualism is one of the first obstacles that new arrivals in America must overcome. 7 in 10 Americans believe it's essential that immigrants speak English, and unfortunately, they're probably right. Without a firm grasp of English, it's very difficult for immigrants to get a job, complete necessary steps to stay in the country, and take control of their lives. So many immigrant families today are doing what my great-grandparents did 100 years ago, erasing their native language to force their children to learn English. My great-grandparents came from Italy in 1899. To ensure their children's future in America, they refused to speak to them in Italian. Because of this, my grandfather and his siblings quickly forgot all their native tongue and never passed it on to their children. Today, there's only one person in my family who speaks it: me. I learned the language and was able to reconnect with the Italian heritage that was lost when my great-grandparents had to adapt themselves to American culture. But even though I speak the same language as my grandparents, I will always speak it with an American accent. When I first read the passage from Corinthians, I was struck by the emphasis on individuality. Everyone has their own role, their own gift. Nobody is forced to conform or sacrifice something about themselves to survive. This idea is reinforced in the reading from Acts. In the reading, the Holy Spirit spoke to a crowd, and they found that they could all understand what it was saying. It wasn't that they all could suddenly understand the common tongue. The Holy Spirit manifested itself in the native language of each listener. In doing so, it connected with each person, and by extent, their culture, their heritage, and their homeland as well. This respect was missing when my great-grandparents came to America, and it's still missing today. Immigrants give up the language and erase their culture so they and their children can be accepted. That shouldn't have to happen. The mix of different cultures is what makes America such an incredible melting pot. In insisting on conformity, we lose what makes America special. Language is simultaneously one of the most personal connections you can share with others, and one of the most expansive. Nelson Mandela said, "Ukuba otetenomento elgolwimi alungkondayo kokuya engoentloko, kodwa ukuba otetenaye engolwimi luake tsakasana o kokuya engo entlitsueni." If you talk to a man in a language that he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his own language, that goes to his heart. Conversely, a lack of a shared language can lead to confusion, frustration, sometimes even accidental insults. Some ideas can only be conveyed in certain languages, and some concepts only have attached words in certain languages. For example, the German word Treppenwitz, literally staircase wit, is when you come up with the perfect comeback when you're already halfway down the stairs. We don't have a word for that specific frustration in English, so we wouldn't quite be able to understand the annoyance or empathize with it. This is a mild example of a much larger issue. If we don't learn other languages, we close ourselves off from new concepts, cultures, and even ways of viewing the world. The language of a culture reveals what's most important to that culture, with priorities that might seem bizarre or skewed to others. There's the classic example of the Inuits having 50 words for snow, but that's not the only example. As the Inuits prioritize snow, English speakers prioritize talking and moving. Say and go are the 34th and 40th most used words in English, and together have about 2,000 synonyms. So from this, we can infer that English-speaking culture values constant motion and expression of ideas. We may think of this particular focus as standard, but it's really not. In Italian, there's only one verb used for active motion, andare, and only a handful used for speech. Instead, Italian's most common words include amici, amore, mangiare, friends, love, eating. One of the reasons I've stayed so long at All Saints is the language we use here. Our language is positive, inclusive, and respectful to everyone. I especially admire our interpretation of the Bible, which is surprising because the Bible was what originally deterred me from Christianity. The Bible is interpreted differently by everyone who reads it, and even the words themselves are an interpretation. The Bible wasn't written in English, so the phrases and stories so many build their faith around are inherently warped by the translation. I found something so distant from the source material very difficult to trust, and even more so to put any emotional weight on. This unease grew as I got older and saw the horrible things people were doing and justifying with the Bible. Homophobia, sexism, racism have all been supported by different interpretations of this book. I didn't want to trust anything that could condone these atrocities. But as I grew up in the All Saints community and started really listening to the sermons, I realized that the Bible isn't inherently bad. Some people do manipulate it to support their twisted beliefs, but the words themselves are open to interpretation. At All Saints, our understanding of the Bible comes from a place of kindness and respect, not fear and hatred. This difference is why 12 years later, I'm still here. Learning other languages allows you to see the world from the eyes of another culture, or even discover a culture you never knew existed. In the 1990s, there was conflict over whether American Sign Language should be taught in schools. One of the arguments against its inclusion was that there wasn't any ASL culture. But the people making these claims didn't realize that hearing impaired and deaf people have their own culture. Since ASL has become a recognized foreign language in schools, the public's awareness of the deaf community has greatly improved. The simple addition of a language to American curriculums made American society much more inclusive. If languages can change society, think of the effect they can have on individuals. I know for me, each language has made me that much more open-minded, confident, and connected. Charlemagne said, "Avoir une autre langue, c'est posséder une deuxième âme." To have another language is to possess a second soul. In my experience, yeah. This connection is my favorite thing that my languages have brought me, but each language gives me something special. My first foreign language was French, and I fell in love with the fluidity and poetry of the French language. Spanish allows me to understand my neighborhood and my city in a new way. Italian is the most fun to speak, and it brought me back to my ancestors. Japanese is the hardest language I've ever learned, and while I'm definitely not fluent, I'm really proud of myself for the progress I've made so far. Mandarin gives me security for the future and opens up business paths I never would have had otherwise. My languages have made my life so interesting, and I'm so grateful to them. Plus, I really enjoy the look on people's faces when they realize I've been understanding everything they've been saying. Languages connect people, define cultures, and change lives. And my dream is for everyone to experience a multilingual world. Ludwig Wittgenstein said, "Die Grenze meiner Sprache bedeutet die Grenze meiner Welt." The limits of my language are the limits of my world. If we become truly multilingual, we can create a world without limits. Thank you.